Good morning, potential SBE photographers. My name is Mr. Hall and I'm going to be delivering the Taste the Day session for A-level photography this morning. Could you just let me know on the chat function that you can hear me okay? Perfect, thank you, Amelia. Okay, so we are going to get started now. This session is being recorded, so you can obviously rewatch at any point. There's going to be a lot of information about the course content. I'm going to go over about how we assess you, things that we cover within the course, and also give you some information into the summer transition task as well. And there are a couple of resources that I'm going to share with you to help support you if you do end up coming to us in September. So for those of you that are obviously interested in photography, the way that the course is structured is you are going to be assessed against the OCR exam board, and that is split into two different components over the 2-year course. The first component is a personal investigation, and this is where you will produce two elements: a practical portfolio of work that is response to a starting point or brief, and that is obviously provided to you by us, the centre. So we set the theme and then you base your project around that theme. And you also need to have alongside that a related study, which is an extended written kind of essay, almost like a mini dissertation that's around 2,000 to 3,000 words around photographers that you find interesting that relate to your project. Now that is going to be marked out of 120 marks, and that is going to be worth 60% of your overall grade for that component. The second component is an externally set task. Now, this is kind of an exam kind of task set to you by the exam board. For those of you that have previously done maybe art or GCSE photography, you may have understood that obviously in previous years you would have done an externally set task, but obviously due to the impact of COVID, they've not been able to do that this year. But that will continue next year, especially if you go on to do your A-levels. So the early release paper of the externally set task is around the beginning of February. So you won't start this until you enter year 13, okay? So your personal investigation, you'll start in year 12, and that will take you right up until the February in year 13, where you will then start your externally set task. It's basically a mini project where the response and the starting points is based around what the exam board want you to look at. And in the paper, they'll have various different tasks for you to select from. You will produce one, you'll select one theme and produce a response based upon one of those. And that is going to be marked out of 80 marks, and it's going to be a 15-hour exam, which is a practical exam, so don't be put off by the amount of time. It's basically 3 days in the art room producing your photography outcomes for that project. And that is going to be worth 40%, okay? So you can see the weighting. Obviously, your coursework personal investigation weighs a lot more by obviously half extra on top of the 40%. So whatever kind of grade we normally see the students getting in their coursework, they do normally improve in the externally set task. However, they normally come out with whatever grade they get in the personal investigation due to the weighting. So that's kind of the breakdown of the course structure. So obviously photography, there's lots of different specialisms within photography. Photography is becoming a very contemporary, modern kind of way of recording and observing. And there's lots of different forms of photography that you can cover within the course. So you are required to choose one or more of these areas. So you could look into portraiture, landscape photography, commercial photography, still life documentary, experimental imagery, editorial photography, installational 3D photography work, the photographic process, moving image, and animation. So although photography, yes, we think of static images, there are lots of options for you to obviously branch out into other art forms, such as installational 3D work, and also animation and moving image, which is kind of like cinematic photography. And also, obviously, you can do video recordings as well. It doesn't have to be a still image. So the overview, what you're going to be obviously assessed against, and the areas that you need to obviously provide evidence of. You should be able to explore research and acquire techniques to develop your own skills, knowledge, and understanding of photography. You'll be able to explore relevant images and sources relating to traditional or digital photography, and use either digital methods or traditional methods to produce your own work. You will also be expected to demonstrate specialist media and processes to allow appropriate depth of study, and this can be achieved by working towards extending and developing themes based upon what you're researching into. You will also need to demonstrate drawing skills within this coursework, because we are still a specialism within the art course, and you will still be part of an A-level art course. Photography has its own unique code, but they do ask that you demonstrate drawing skills. Now, this can be done in any appropriate way that you see fit. And what we normally tend to get students doing is mini mock-up diagrams of photo shoot plans, and that will be part of drawing skills. Also, if you're doing any digital manipulation on Photoshop and drawing back into your photographs, that would count as drawing skills as well. And the reason for that is just to kind of be an appropriate way of recording and communicating your ideas, intentions, and also the context of what it is you're exploring. So skills and knowledge that we provide to you on the course at Shenley, okay, is skills. You're going to be obviously introduced to composition in photography. You're also going to be use of understanding of application of scales that's appropriate to your work, and also the direction of your intentions for your project. We will introduce you to the formal elements such as color, tone, texture, shape, form in relation to photography, and also things like editing and highlighting photographic images. Use of appropriate visual language and terminology, so things like depth of field would come into there, aperture, shutter speeds, rule of thirds, all of these different kinds of things that we get you thinking about when you start the course. We also obviously introduce you to how to manipulate images to convey different emotions, meanings, and concepts. And also for your skills, you need to have relevant conventions in genres of those photographers. So you need to show obviously skills in those specialisms. The knowledge that you're going to require is you're going to be relevant technologies and materials and processes. So we do have access to obviously digital cameras, digital SLRs, a flash kit. We've also just bought some backdrops, etc., for the art room in the sixth form area. And we've got some different lenses for the cameras. We also have Photoshop on all of our computers. Unfortunately, we don't have access to a darkroom, so we can't introduce you to traditional methods, but you will be introduced to that in a theoretical way. So we are primarily a digital department. You will also obviously produce lots of different ideas, feelings, and meanings about your work that are conveyed from your sources and photographers that you research. The knowledge that you require about how images and artifacts relate to time and place needs to be put into your analysis of social and cultural context. And you also need to obviously have knowledge of vocabulary and specialist terminology, which is what's going to get you more marks for the assessment objectives. So how will the course be structured? What's going to happen in the first year of year 12? So from September to December, we spend the first full term in winter building your skills and knowledge around the photography specialism. Now, for obviously those of you that have done GCSE photography before, would be fantastic because you'll have a bit of an advantage. But don't be worried or don't get a little bit stressed or overwhelmed if you have not studied GCSE photography before, because we'll be spending the first term introducing you to the basics of this course. From January to May, we will continue to develop your skills, but we will be doing it against mini briefs. So we assign you 2 briefs in that term, and you will spend probably around 6 to 8 weeks on each brief, looking at the structure of the assessment objectives, looking at how to research photographers, and how to develop your ideas based around the theme. And I'm going to show you an example of a brief in the next slide. From May afterwards in year 12, we then introduce you to your personal investigation. Now, this is going to be your component 1, 60% coursework unit. You will continue with that unit right up until the February when you get back into year 13. So as you can see, you'll obviously spend the rest of the summer term in year 12 and the beginning term in year 13 of the winter term to complete that component. From February onwards, you will obviously hand in your coursework unit to be assessed, and then you'll be given that back with feedback. If any improvements need to be done, you'll have to do that in your own time. But from February onwards until the end of the course in May time, you will be focusing on the externally set task, which is 40%, okay? So it will be very much a kind of really short turnaround for that coursework. unit if you have to do any improvements. So I would suggest that you really do spend that time improving it if needs be. So when I was talking to you about the mini briefs that we get you to do, this is a particular one that we get students to look at. This is what we call the selfie brief. So we introduce you to different artists and photographers that use portraiture as a means to convey different ideas and concepts within the genre of photography. This is the kind of brief that you would be given in lesson. So it gives you a breakdown of introductions, bullet points for you to consider. So for each project, you'll be given this format of a brief. There'll be an overarching theme that you'll need to develop your own personal project. The brief will outline the tasks that you should complete. The brief will also give you ideas and prompts to think about to get you started. And you will complete 3 projects in total. Those 2 mini briefs in year 12 and that sustained brief to influence your personal investigation from year 12 through to year 13. So how your work will be assessed. Now, I've talked about assessment objectives previously. So we have 4 assessment objectives at A level with OCR. And these are the 4 assessment objectives are the same for your component 1, personal investigation, and component 2, the externally set task. And essentially what they are is assessment objective number 1 is your research, you developing your ideas based upon your sources of photographers. You need to demonstrate analytical and critical understanding of those sources and how they're going to influence your work. For assessment objective number 2, you're going to explore and select appropriate media and materials and techniques based upon your research and your theme, and refine your ideas by exploring those processes to develop your work. Assessment objective number 3 is you recording your ideas, observations, and insights. So this is going to be contact sheets, your own photography work, and also working processes, screenshots of your editing processes, and your written annotations of your thought processes. And then finally, assessment objective number 4 is you presenting your outcomes, which are personal and meaningful based upon your intentions that are appropriate and make connections to your project. So to give you a kind of idea as to what kind of visual work we do within the department, we've got some example work for you to look at. So these particular sheets are from a current year 13 student that's just finished. So this particular student was looking at different ethnicities and different portraits of different ethnicities and genders. So what they did is they started researching different photographers, and you can see that on the top left-hand corner, a research sheet of their analytical understanding and examples of the photographer's work. Now, this particular photographer obviously used different formats of color images and black and white images with different poses of the same person that then they would use, cut out, and then stitch back together using thread. So this particular student went forward and produced their own kind of photography work using portraiture, taking black and white images, and kind of coming up with their own concepts in response. So they're covering here assessment objective number 1, assessment objective number 2, and assessment objective number 3, research, experimentation, and recording. Here are some more examples of some current year 12 students' work. Now, these are based upon the theme of their personal investigation, ideals, flaws, and imperfections. So this particular student has looked at photographers that look at portraiture as well, again, but looking at a more digital enhancement rather than a hand manipulation of sewing into them. So these have been produced on Photoshop and all been produced using the flash lighting kit that we have in the department. Some more examples that we've got forward. This particular student for their personal investigation that's just finished in year 13 was looking at the theme of a state of flux, which is about constant change. This particular student was interested in the digital revolution of photography and how digital technology has advanced photography. So they were looking at glitch art and light trails. So we can see here they're using portraits as their main subject matter and obviously communicating our obsession with the advancement of technology. And that's obviously been presented through the use of slow shutter speeds with the light trails that you can see on the left-hand side, and then digital manipulations using glitch and pixel stretch on Photoshop. Now, this particular student, again, was looking at a state of flux, but this student was looking into the progress of kind of teenage influence and also how teenagers kind of teenage culture. So they were looking in graffiti art, they were looking into kind of like candid Photoshop kind of portraits, looking at environments, looking at where like kind of teenagers hang out, and using, rather than kind of a more editorial look, they were looking more of kind of into the grungy kind of posing look. And what they did on top of their photographs is use Posca pens and acrylic paint to paint over kind of graffiti styles over the portraits. So again, even though we've got portraits, we've seen 3 different areas that you can go down. This particular student was looking at climate change. So they were looking into environments, about how looking at flooding, factories, smoke, fire, weather change, and our impact that we're having on our environments. They looked at a range of different photographers from black and white to color. And they also progressed their project from still images into moving images. And their final piece was a flip book. So just on the next slide, we've got some examples of their work. So you can see here the GIF on the right-hand side. This was their moving image that they produced on Photoshop. And it was kind of a concept of showing the impact that humans have on the environment, and that we are kind of destroying the earth. And we can see that from the progression of the colors and the black and white stakes coming into the silhouette of the person in the center. On the left-hand side is some portfolio sheets that they did, explaining the process here, and also showing examples of how they produced their mini mock-ups for their flip book. So obviously we've shown you examples of the work. I've talked to you about the structure of the course. I just wanted to, before we end this session, is talk to you about the summer transition task. So for those of you that do intend to come to us, you will be given this summer transition task based around the theme of the senses. So what do you need to do for this summer task? You're going to research and explore the themes of senses and create a series of photographs inspired by this. How? What we expect from you on the first lesson back is to have a PowerPoint presentation for your first lesson that you're going to obviously present to everyone in your first lesson, okay? So we ask students to do this because during the course, we do get students to share their work and present their work across the class. And it builds a lot of collaboration. You get a lot of constructive feedback, not just from me, but also from your peers. And you also build really confident skills and knowledge, being able to communicate your ideas effectively. So what you're going to do is, obviously for this project, is produce a PowerPoint presentation with a combination of your own photographs, digital edits in response to the theme of senses, using a range of techniques and processes. Why have we sent this as your transition task? It's to develop and refine your observational photography skills, and also looking more closely at things around you that you see and experience every day, and to also experiment with editing techniques before you start the course. So to provide support with this, there is a PDF document on the file section, which I'll show in just a second before we break off at the end of the session. And there'll also be time for any questions and answers at the end as well. But the PDF document gives you 4 tasks to do. So the first task is to create 1 slide of your PowerPoint presentation on a mind map exploring the 5 senses in relation to photography. So how can smells, taste, sound be captured by a photograph? Task 2 is to research and analyze the work of one of the photographers from the PDF document, creating a 1 slide for that photographer. You're going to look closely at their work relating to the sense that they are discussed within the PDF document, and use your analytical understanding of analyzing the work. How does it show that kind of sense? Remember to use the photography formal elements in your annotations, and there is a help guide sheet at the end, which I'm going to show you in a second. The third task is to take 3 photographs for each of the headings of the senses in the slide. So 3 photographs for taste, 3 photographs for smell, etc. The first one should be a literal representation of the description, and the second and third should be more abstract versions, looking at maybe close-up crops and finding unrecognizable or recognizable features of the objects, okay? Task 4 is then to create your final series, so a series of photographs exploring the 5 senses. You can use whatever editing techniques and processes you feel are most appropriate, and you should also think about how you can present your images to enhance your sensory experience. Each sequence should consist of 6 final images and should add to your final images and editing processes to your PowerPoint slides with full annotations. So in the PDF document, I do believe that it is a 20-page document. There are 3 pages on that PDF document to help you with this, okay? So one of them is a link to URL links attached to the PDF for reading and inspiration. There is also the vocabulary support sheet for annotating your work and researching your chosen photographer. And also we've got some various starting points for you to consider linking to the senses of taste, smell, hearing, sight, and touch. To provide extra support as well, in the file section, this PowerPoint and PDF document on the free photo editing apps will be uploaded to the file section on this channel, which I'll show you how to locate before you leave. I would ask you to download all of those PDF documents so that you've got that there for you, so that if they're ready for when you need to start the summer transition task. So in this PDF document, there is a lot of different free apps that you can download on your smartphones or on your computers, and there are websites as well in that PDF document for you to use that are free to use to edit your images. So things like Adobe Photoshop Express, Snapseed, and Prisma are all really, really good apps for you to edit your images. So I just want to quickly, before I open it up to you for Q&A session, is show you where to locate these documents. So I'm just going to start, obviously, to share my screen. So hopefully you can see my screen. What you're going to do is you're going to come to the Teams channel in photography where you've just assigned. So this is the photography channel for the Taste of Day channel, okay? You're going to come to the Files section, okay? And in here, you've got the 3 documents that I was just talking about. So SBE Virtual Taste of Day Session, that's the PowerPoint presentation. You've also got the Transition and Summer Task Project, if you click on this particular one. Okay, here's the PDF document that you can go through at your leisure, 19 pages. The photographers are there that you to choose from. Okay, and then you've also got breakdowns of how you want to do each task as well, and some things to consider and think about for each of the senses. And then here are the supporting documents, the links, the vocabulary support sheet, and then finally you have this PDF document for the photo editing apps and websites that you can use for your work. Okay, so that's everything that I've covered for the content. So I'm just going to stop sharing, and now I'm going to open it up to you. If you've got any Q&A or any questions about the course that I haven't covered, please use the chat function to answer them now, and I'll hopefully answer them. If you don't have any questions, you are free to go, but please do email me at chall@sbeschool.org.uk if any questions do crop up. But you are free to go unless you've got any questions. Thank you very much for attending, guys. No problem. Take care. Thank you very much for attending.